Alright, today I'm going to talk about how to open the VV-50, Victor Victrola 50, for service, and some of the common noise-making problems you might encounter in one you've bought off eBay or wherever. Here we have a typical 1922 model. This has the half metal horn, half wood horn, although all pretty much the same horn-wise, they come apart the same way. We start by opening the lid, doing this one-handed, so, okay. There's no there's no hinge on this one, but we'll pretend it's there. This one has a back damage to the case. You see here, this is your lid stay. This keeps your lid up when you're playing it, and it prevents the lid from flopping all the way open and cracking open the back panel, as happened with this machine. As you can see, there's damage back there, pretty severe too. So you always want to keep that lid stay on until it comes time to service it. Very easy to unlatch. Just lift it up out of its little holder there. Pull it forward until it reaches the little slot. See the little slot right there? Well, you can't see it too well, but it is there. Now I'm going to try to do this one-handed, so bear with me. And feel around a little bit until, there we go. And then this will, see that little nub right there? That fits right through the slot that's there. And then now it's open, and if there was a hinge here, what you would do is put 3 or 4 books or something soft, a pillow maybe, behind here, so that when this lid goes all the way back, it is supported. Very, very important. Never let this lid flip back, or you will damage the machine, possibly severely. We'll just set this aside. We'll pretend that that is leaning back there. I took the hinge off to straighten it. I really haven't done anything with it yet. Next thing you want to do is your reproducer. And all Victrola reproducers, they all come off the same way. Doesn't matter if you have an orthophonic or an exhibition or a number 2 like this one. Some of them might be a little tight, especially if they're originals and they've been on there a long time. This one is kind of loose because the rubber in the back is not in good shape. Rotate it like that. See what I did? Rotate it like that. And then you wiggle it off the shaft. That's it. Rotate, wiggle it off, because the shaft, as you can see, that little L-shaped hole right there, and if you look in there, there's another little nub. That's what you lock your reproducer on with, and you rotate it and pull it right off. Set that aside in a safe place so you won't drop it or otherwise damage it. Now, you have 4 screws, and most Victrolas will have 4 screws holding the motor boards down. 1, they won't always be big ones like this, sometimes they're little ones. 2, 3, and 4. So you'll unscrew those. I've already done it here, but you unscrew them, take them out, and set them aside. Oh, my magnetic dish is full. Well, we'll put them over there. Now, if you want to take off the turntable, you would have to unscrew this. I've already loosened it. You notice there's a screw slot, and please use screwdrivers that properly fit these slots, or you will bugger them up. Just take that off. See, that's all there is to it. Sometimes, if the machine hasn't been disturbed for many, many years, this can be a little tight. And this can also be rusted on there. I have seen all of those things. Set the tone arm aside like that, and then you just pull it up. Pull it up like that. And underneath you'll find all the filth and dust bunnies and all of that stuff, and you'll also find your patent sticker on there. This one says, can't even read it, 1922, I believe that is. Is that 22 or 23? 22. Okay, now, to pull the motor board, you don't actually have to remove this, because it will come off with this attached, and sometimes it gives you a little bit more things to grab on. Don't be prying on this, because you can bend it, then you're going to have a wobble. You know, that happens too. Set that aside. You don't have to take that off to remove the motor board. This is the motor board assembly. And the ones with full horns will have metal all the way out to here in the back. A little bit overlap here. This one only has a half horn with metal. Well, it has a full horn, but half the horn is wood, half the horn is metal. But now it's loose. So what you're going to do, now I'm doing this one-handed, so bear with me here a second. I put my tools aside, move that over. Grasp it here, right here like this. Good grasp. It's easier if you have two hands. Obviously, you'd grasp in the front too. Do not lift up on the speed control because you could alter it. You'd either lift up on the turntable if you had it on there, just a little bit on the edge, or just grab that and lift up on that, just guiding it. There. See how that comes out? It slides between the brackets there, up and down. Very easy. Because these machines are meant to be oiled once or twice a year, maybe more frequently if you're using it a lot, like they would have in the 1920s. Most people today aren't using them that much. And here we have the empty case. You can see all the little needles that accumulate down there and junk and stuff that just gets in there over many years. Okay, now I'm going to put the camera down for a minute, and I'm going to set this upside down in the case so you can see the motor works. I'm just rotating it upside down, and I'm setting it right back in there. Just like that. Obviously, I wouldn't be bothering to put this back in the case if I was going to take the whole motor apart and service it. This one hasn't seen service in probably 80 years. I mean, it looks pretty nasty. A lot of black graphite grease on there. Okay, you just bought your Victrola on eBay and you've brought it home. It's arrived or whatever. You've wound it up, and remember, if this thing is fully unwound and it's unserviced, even if it is serviced, you're still going to have to wind it probably 20 or 30 times, sometimes more. I didn't count them, but quite a bit. Until you start to feel resistance, and then you stop when you feel the resistance. Not the resistance of normal cranking, but when you get towards the end, all of a sudden it gets a little bit harder, you stop right there. Don't force it. Okay, now what we have, where's my pointer? We have a governor on here. This is the governor right here. This little thing, it turns. See, it's got 3 weights on it. It's got springs. This is what regulates your speed. There's your friction leather that rides against the governor and keeps it at whatever speed you set it. Maybe 78 RPM, maybe 80, whatever the case may be. Very often, you've started your machine, you've wound it up. Now, if you're winding it and you get maybe 5 or 10 or maybe no cranks, and you feel like something slipped inside, whoof, like that, it slipped. What's happening there is your spring is broken, and it's slipping. It'll wind up a little bit, and then it'll reach the broken spot, and then slip, releasing all the tension out of the spring. So that's as far as you're going to go. Then you're going to have to replace the spring. But say the spring does wind up. Now you release the brake if it holds, and the turntable starts to move, and you hear a sound like this. Or a little bit deeper than that. What that is one of these weights. See the little spring? The little spring is broken, and the weight is hanging on one end, and it's swinging around, and it's hitting the wood, it's hitting the housing there, and it's making that whack, whack, whack sound. Now, when it comes off all the way, and it will with force, so if you happen to be running the motor open like this, and it's doing that, stop immediately, because that thing comes off, it's going to hurt you. You know, it's going to leave a mark. So, if that weight has come all the way off, what's going to happen is this is going to be out of balance, and the machine is going to be shuddering. It'll still run, but it's going to be shuddering. It's not going to sound nice at all. So you're going to have to take that out and repair it. And luckily, the weights, the springs, and even the tiny screws that hold them to the brass governor assembly there are all available new. You can get them brand new. And this one is actually in very good shape. Those are very nice springs on there. The weights look good. They're not rusty. Little grease. They're not bent strangely or anything like that. That one I would actually leave alone. No, I don't like that one. I don't like that one because that spring looks like it's bent a little bit in the middle. I don't know if that's going to show up on camera. Doesn't matter because I keep these springs in stock and generally I do replace them. Okay, we've gotten past that noise. Now the only other noise it's really going to make... Now I'm not talking about gear noise. Every Victrola has a voice. They're all different. Some are a little louder than others. Some are softer. The little whirring noise they make when all the gears are spinning and meshing, you see how many there are in there. That's normal. But if you start hearing any other kind of noise, like a swishing sound or clacking sound as it works, what can happen sometimes, and now you see here, this right here, this is your spring can. The spring is wound up in there. It's the same spring I just showed you, right or similar. It's similar spring to that one. It's inside that can. This is your can's lid. You open this to take the spring out and grease it and all of that stuff. Now if you look in here, right in here we have a round, metal clip. Now, what can happen when this nasty old grease is not on there? It's like cement. It's not on there anymore, and your machine has been serviced, and it has brand new grease on there, all nice and slick. It's modern lubricants. That little clip can come off. Its only job is really keeping that lid on there when you're packing the spring and you're putting the motor together, so that you don't drop the top off and get grease and oil all over yourself and everything you're working on. It can't go anywhere. This lid cannot go anywhere. So if this little clip pops off, that's all right. But you can't run the motor with that spring. Let me see if I can pop it off there. I don't know if I can do it like this. Well, let me put the camera down for a minute, and I will find the end of this clip. It's in here somewhere, and we'll pop it off. Yeah, whoops. I don't want to damage it because I may need it again. There we go. Okay. Now, there's the clip. That's the clip that holds it in. Now you see where it is? It's right in the way of various gears, and it's going to interfere as things are spinning. You see, it's almost touching the governor there. So what we do, let me get a glove. I don't want to get grease all over my hands and the camera. That wouldn't be good. If you see it like that, you're going to do this. I mean, you could try to put it back in its don't even worry about that. Just lift it out like that. There it is. Set it aside. Now, as I said, that isn't going anywhere. You're not going to lose the can. Isn't going to fall out. It can't move in there. It's locked in place, you see, on the shaft. So it's just going to be, off. What you want to do, however, is save that spring. If you're mechanically inclined and you want to put it back on, that's great. That's what I would do. If you're not, just store it somewhere, like tape it to the bottom of this, or somewhere where you won't lose it. Maybe under there or something, where it's out of the way of the motor. And just leave it until the next time the motor is serviced. Because a good shock to these things can pop that off in shipping. This is why I don't like shipping that much, but it's an evil necessity because people live in different parts of the country. You can't conveniently come from California to New York to pick up a Victrola or vice versa. But other than that, there's not a whole lot. Now, I have seen that gear right there. There is actually a screw buried in there. Let me see if I can find one here. I thought I had one. Maybe not. Usually do keep one around. Okay. We'll take this HMV motor and show you on that. That little set screw there, that can come loose. Probably not on a machine this crapped up, but it can come loose. And that gear can slide up and down on the shaft out of its little position. But if that happens, you're going to get a regular grinding noise, or it's going to release the spring tension altogether. You'll know it right away. That's not going to be a gentle noise. Very rarely happens, but it can happen. Another noise that's not uncommon is a clacking sound when you start to crank it. You'll crank it, the first time you crank it, clack, 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 boop, and then it'll catch. What's happening is the pawl, I don't know if you can see it in there. Where's my pointer? Oh, there it is. It's right here. On this motor, it's right here. It's a, let's see if the 188, no, the HMV doesn't use this. What happens here is this is riding on grease, and if the grease is tough and cold, it'll miss a couple of little steps. Let's see if I can show you here. These little steps on the gear, it'll miss a couple and just clack over them, which is perfectly fine. It'll settle in. Something like that is normal. On a hot day, the grease will run down, you'll be fine. But as you can see, that's really it. There's not a whole lot more that happens to these that causes any noise making or anything like that. Now, as you can see here, that is your lubrication chart. Every Victrola started off life with one, and most will still retain this chart hidden under the motorboard someplace or inside the cabinet. Doesn't matter if it's a big floor machine or a little portable, they all have it. It tells you what to grease and what to oil. Usually, if you don't use the machine that much, once a year is fine. The most important is your governor bearings. That would be here, here, and here at the other end of the governor, either end of the governor shaft. Just a drop of oil is all it needs. Then you want to put some here on the governor. So the shaft, that's a shaft in there, a steel shaft with a brass sleeve, and it moves on there. See if I can get this one to do it. Yeah, see how it moves? So you have to lubricate that, just a drop of oil, and your friction leather, which is right here. That's your friction leather. You must oil this. That's the most important. If you don't oil that, it will start to wear at a very rapid rate. So you want to oil that at least once a year if you don't play it that much, or twice a year if you play it regularly. Now, this machine has never been cleaned by the look of things, and you can see that the grease has distributed itself all over the place. Normally, when you service one of these, you're going to get rid of all that grease. You're going to wash it all off with some sort of solvent, and it's all going to be bare metal, and you're going to reapply grease to the gears. Now, if you want to start a food fight on the internet message boards that deal with, Victrolas and collectible phonographs, insist on a certain kind of grease, because everybody has their own preference, and I'm going to tell you a little secret. They all work. It doesn't matter if you're using black powdered graphite with Vaseline like Edison pioneered, or if you're using modern moly grease that you use on your car. They all work. If you're going to trust your very expensive brand new automobile with a certain kind of grease, trust me, a 100-year-old Victrola would work just fine with it. Put it in the spring. Put it here on the gear. Put it down here on a little worm on the governor shaft, on this gear, over here. Don't get too carried away. A little bit is fine. Over here and down in here, just like you see here, but a little bit neater because you've already cleaned everything. That should be done at least yearly. If you're not playing the machine ever and it's just a display piece, none of this is necessary. But if you do play it, even if it's only a few records, at least once a year you should open it up, and you should grease and oil all the spots that they show right there on that convenient sticker they put on the motorboard just for this purpose. This is a mechanical device, and it needs to be lubricated. There are no sealed bearings in this. They didn't have that in this era. You're going to put some on the shaft here, a little bit there, a little bit there. This is your speed control shaft. This is how you regulate the speed. It attaches to that little knob on the other side of the motorboard, and you can see it'll move the friction leather in or out. And if it moves out to here, when the governor is spinning, this brass disc is going to move out to meet that friction. And it'll stop there. The leather will hold it. The leather will ride on it. It'll hold it there, and that's how you're holding your speed. Without the governor, the speed would just release at 100 miles an hour, and you wouldn't be able to play records. Now, the Victrola motors differ in appearance, depending on the age and the era, number of springs, such, but they're all basically the same. What you're going to do to this little one spring here, you're going to do to a big 4 spring. Same thing. Cleaning, servicing, lubricating. And there you go. This right here, this is where your crank would go in. Your winding handle, if you're British, will go in right here. Screws in. You want to put a drop of oil here too, both on the outside and in the threads. You don't want to leave that to get rusty and all crudded up so that your crank gets stuck in there. Now, if you decide to go a step further and service your own Victrola, that's great, but please, one thing to remember. Under here, there is a felt washer in there, one under each of these screws. And notice there are 2 nuts on there. That's how they lock. You see the felt washer? You can see it here. Okay, that's a better shot. Right there. That felt washer. Do not lose them, and please replace them. That gives you the proper spacing of the motor on the motorboard so your crank lines up with that hole. If you do away with those washers or you lose one or something, the motor's not going to sit there properly at the right height. And you're going to have problems trying to put your winding handle in there. It's not going to mesh up with the hole properly, and it's going to be bent. It's going to be a mess. You don't want to do that. And if you try to wind it off center, you're going to loosen the 2 screws here, and this is going to be flopping around. You don't want that either. And that pretty much covers most of the issues you run into with these things. Broken governor spring. The retaining clip on the spring can has come loose. The pawl is riding on some grease and clacking a little bit. You only have that happen when you're actually cranking the machine. When it's turning and playing a record, that will not happen. Possibility of loose screws, but you'll notice that instantly. And you want to make sure your governor's adjusted right too. This one, see how much plays in there? That's slightly excessive. I generally like about half that much. You cannot have the governor tightened in there. Don't do that because you will stop the machine. It just will not spin properly. So what you do, you want to have a tiny bit of play, but not quite that much. About half that much is good. Just enough to keep things loose, because there is a bearing shell in here with a small ball bearing in it. And when you clean these, you have to get that ball bearing out of there using solvents and picks like this one. Cleaning, you clean out the brass shell, you put the bearing back in there, a little tiny bit of grease to keep it in there, and you adjust it. This end adjusts very easily because there is a mark right on the bearing shell where the screw will go right down into it. So that is set in one position, only one position. You don't move it in or out. You set it right there in that mark. This one, however, this is the adjustable side. This side does not have that smooth. Let me see if I can find one here. Where are they? I thought I had a couple. Oh, those ones are actually in solvents. No, I won't be able to show you that. I'm sorry. Well, anyway, that brass bearing shell, right there, you see it? It just slides in and out. Goes right out of there. This is the one you adjust. You loosen the screw, you push it in. Sometimes you'll have to tap it a little because they get stuck with old grease and all that. Or you push it out a little bit depending on how tight you want it. But you always adjust from this side. That side always stays in one position. That's it. But that's it. That's how you open your Victrola, how you lubricate it. And I'll show you how to put it back in just a second. Let me put the camera down again. Turn this over. You lift it straight up. You turn it over. Grasp it by the horn or the front. Well, I probably should use my other hand to do it. Okay. And I just got grease all over myself. Lovely. And then we are just going to set it right back in there. That's it. And you put the 4 screws back, which I will do later on, but you see what I mean? One there, one in each corner. The 50 is very easy to work with. 2. Now, we need the turntable back on. I don't lose that screw. Open the brake like that, and then just slide that. This is, well, I can't do it without looking. There we go. Right onto the spindle. It's a little stiff. Don't worry about that. This one's not oiled, but now you want to spin that around until you hear it go click like that, and you'll see it's that the shaft and the turntable are pretty much flush. That means it's falling down into its retaining pin. That's where it should be. And then we're going to put this back in there, just like that. And you'll don't go Hercules on this. Just tighten a little bit. Let me find a screwdriver. There we go. You don't have to go crazy on this because you need to take it off periodically. So just a little bit like that. It's good. Just so it doesn't come out when you're playing records. It's good to go just like that. And these, same thing. You don't have to super tighten anything here. You're going to run that down until, you feel it gets snug. Just like that. Oops. That's it. You don't want to get these too tight because this is wood. Wood will compress. You can see it's already done that on this model a little bit over the years. So just snug them. Don't super tighten those things. You don't need to be super tight. Just as long as it keeps the motorboard in place. And then, of course, you would put your reproducer back on the shaft. I'm not going to do that with this one because that's going into the rebuild pile. So obviously this is going to need some work. Let's see what we have here. It's dirty, for one thing. That would need to be cleaned up. The diaphragm looks okay, but those gaskets look terrible. Those are rock solid. And alignment is a little bit off. I could see that already. That's normal. And look at this back gasket here. That is hard as stone. The isolator gasket is hard as stone. It's swollen. That needs to be replaced. And to replace it, you take out the 2 set screws, top and bottom, and notice that the pin lines up with the upper set screw. And you would pry this. Basically, you're drilling that, not drilling, but you're taking a small, sharp pick or screwdriver and gently working away, without damaging the brass, working away at the old rubber in there. If you have a lot of time, there are formulas you can use. You can soak, you can take the 4 screws out here, separate the 2 pieces of the body and soak this in something. But if you notice the back of this, well, it is showing a lot of brassing. This darker color back here, that is a chemical process. It's chemically darkened at the Victor factory. If you soak this in something, you could remove that chemical blacking, what's left of it in this case, and end up with high polished brass back there, which will not look correct. And there really is no substitute. I mean, I'm sure the formula exists somewhere, but then you're playing with chemicals and making a big project out of it. Don't do it. It's better to take a small pick. What did I do with the one I had? I had a pick. Ah, here we go. Small pick, and just pick at that. It'll take a while. Don't expect this to be a 5-minute job. You're going to be at this an hour or two sometimes, because you're going to have to work very slow so you don't damage the brass here. You're just picking that isolated gasket out when it's all out, or it gets loose. Sometimes they will. You should notice there's an inner brass sleeve there. That's part of this gasket. Then it'll pop out, and you're going to put the new isolator gasket. They're available. You can get them. They're on eBay. Try to get one of the softer ones.